Good evening, good afternoon, and greetings of the day for all the participants who have joined today's webinar. As you are aware, we have started this new series of webinar under the SIG clinical practice to understand the changes in the audiology practice happening due to the pandemic. From almost a year, I think many of the clinicians who are working in the private practice or who are working in institutional setups have been very innovative and have tried, tested, experimented various aspects to come back into their clinical practices. There were initial hiccups because of understanding the technology and how to merge the technology and how to reach out to the clients who are with limited access to the technology. But still, I think all of us have shared information together and have been very successful, I would say, in coming out and taking up this challenge and meeting the requirements of our clients. Now, in this series, today we have Dr. Vikrant and Patil, who is a proprietor, chief audiologist, and speech pathologist, Ear Science Center. With us, he is a very young, dynamic, and upcoming entrepreneur in the area of audiology and speech language pathology, with more, I think, practice focused to audiology. He has graduated from Manipal University, and being from Manipal University, it gives me great pleasure for me also because I was his mentor here, and I've seen his success right from 2002 when he joined our university, graduated in 2008, and continued his professional development to get his AUD degree from University of Florida in 2012. We've been always in touch in sharing his professional success and his whereabouts. I'm really happy that how he has molded his career over a period of time. And I also have seen in this current challenges how he has shaped his practices. So we thought, it's a good platform for us. It's a good opportunity for us to listen from Vikrant on how the hearing aid dispensing and one of the important aspects of our clinical practice has changed in this era. Let's hear from him. Over to you, Vikrant.
Thank you, sir. At the outset, I would first like to thank ISHA for giving me this opportunity to share the little knowledge that I have and I've been gathering. This moment is quite nostalgic for me, hearing Krishna sir and then me doing presentation. It just feels like I'm back in my college days doing my thesis presentation, right? So with that, we'll come to our topic for today, and that is disruption in hearing aids. So when I talk about disruption in hearing aids, I'm going slightly broader. I would not restrict myself only to the pandemic, but I would talk about what's going to happen in the post-pandemic world and how it's going to affect our profession. And we will look at things we can do to embrace the change that's going to hit us very, very soon. So before we begin the presentation, let's first start with a poll, right? Because your opinion matters. We are online, so I would like to get some feedback from all the participants. So I would request the organizers to just put up the poll, and once we have the answers, we can begin the presentation.
Can you all see the poll question? We request you all to select your option. Hearing aid dispensing for adults is a major part of audiology private practice. Agree, disagree? Start giving your responses. We've been receiving good. We got 68% of the participants voted, 70. A good interaction. It's good to see almost 80% of the people have answered. I think we can stop. Shall we stop at 80%? Yeah. So here it is for you, Vikrant.
Yes.
You can see.
So as expected, 91% of you strongly agree that audiology in private practice involves dispensing of hearing aids for adults. So with that, let's look at the next question. So by OTC and DTC, I would like to clarify, OTC would be over-the-counter hearing aids and DTC would be direct-to-consumer, wherein audiologist role would be bare minimum. So do you think, if you're in private practice or thinking of a private practice, do you think your income and profession is at threat because of these kind of hearing devices?
Yeah, we started getting responses. 53-55% have voted. So far, there's been a mixed response coming up. Okay, there's good things. Okay, 74, 75. Yes, I think we will stop. 75% have voted.
All right. So it's a mixed response, as Sir said, but then still majority of you, 62% of you agree that your income and profession is at threat because of these kind of hearing aids. And it's good to know this answer, not because of the threat, but because this presentation would then make sense to most of you. And those people who disagree to it, I just hope that we don't become overconfident and neglect these devices that are about to hit the market. So we'll talk about that as well. So with that, we'll move to the last question of the poll, and then we'll begin the presentation.
OTC hearing aids are a boon for individuals with hearing loss. Agree? Disagree? Time is going to be short. Act fast. Request you all to give your answers. Give your choices compared to as an answer, because it's a choice. You may agree or you may not disagree. Good. 67. 69% have voted so far. We will stop at 75%.
All right.
Right. We reached 75%.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Interesting.
So interesting. Yes, it's almost 50-50, but it's also interesting to know that people disagree that it's a boon for individuals with hearing loss. So that means there's a strong aversion there. So hopefully at the end of this presentation, perceptions will change, and that way we would be able to see what's in store for us. Okay, so that was our poll. So good answers. This presentation will be relevant to most of you based on the answers that you've given me. So in the next course of 45 minutes, we will look at 4 different agendas. We'll begin with the first agenda. That would talk about the perspectives from a patient's point of view, from a hearing device manufacturer's point of view, and finally from us, that's an audiologist's point of view. Once we spend 15 minutes on this agenda, we'll move to the second agenda, wherein we will talk about what kind of disruptions are around the corner. And then we will talk about, in the third agenda, how do we embrace these disruptions? Or if we fail to embrace, we might actually risk perishing in this field. And finally, we will spend some time on question and answers. So let's begin with perspectives. Now, when it comes to a party which involves hearing aids, there are 3 main culprits or 3 party people who get involved. They are the patients, the manufacturers, and us, the audiologists. So now let's look at the patient's perspective. Now, as we all know, the patients are who are getting hearing aids are getting them sooner. They're becoming younger. Of course, not as young or as pretty as the one photo that you're seeing on the screen. But then one thing we are very sure is they're getting younger and the satisfaction with the hearing devices is increasing year after year. So let's look at this in a bit more detail. Now, if you look back in time and follow a timeline of what a patient had to go through to get a device, it could be split into these 5 different segments. So in the early days, hearing devices were very primitive. Patients had to do everything. They had to adjust the volume, change the programs, and things like that. So when the outcome studies were done at that time, most popularly it was market track surveys, they found out that patients were not very happy with the outcome, especially in noise. And the manufacturers would easily put the blame back on the patients, saying that patients did not know how to adjust everything. They were too old, their dexterity skills were poor, so they used to press the wrong button or keep the hearing aids in the wrong setting. So the manufacturer said, we will take this upon ourselves to make hearing aids more tech savvy, more automatic, more adaptive. So in early days, patient had to do everything. So in not so early days, hearing aids became automatic. Then the audiologist used to tell the patient, look, you don't have to do anything, hearing aid self-adjusts. But then surprisingly, the outcomes in noise were still not that great. And then they realized that the hearing devices, which we thought were smart, were not smart all the time. So sometimes they used to get confused. So they kind of decided that we have to go back to the older way where patient had to adjust the hearing aid again. But this time they said, instead of them fiddling around the buttons, we'll give them some remote control. So that way, hearing aids were automatic, were adaptive, and when the patient was not satisfied, they could just remove the remote from the pocket, make adjustments and personalize settings. Then came the smartphone era. Smartphones started becoming big. Patients started to complain that I cannot carry a remote and a smartphone with me. So today, what we tell them is devices are automatic and adaptive, and we will connect them to your smartphone so that you can adjust your hearing aids and also keep in touch with us, the clinician, for further adjustments. So patient is still not satisfied because with smartphone came in online shopping and Amazon and Flipkart. So patients started to think that, oh, why should I go to the clinic? What if I am able to get hearing aids online, right? So then there was this phase where hearing aids were being sold online, and then we audiologists, there was a huge hue and cry saying that's wrong, these are medical devices, don't do it, and things like that. But the manufacturers, maybe the traditional hearing aid manufacturers or even people outside the industry, they looked at it differently. They thought that there is an opportunity here because patients are looking for these kind of devices online. So very shortly, this will become a reality wherein a patient could do all of the things that they are doing now, but then they could also order hearing aids online and get them delivered to your home without having the need to visit the clinic or see an audiologist like you or me. It sounds scary, but it is not that scary, and we'll look into it why. Now, from the patient's perspective, if you look at the manufacturer's perspective, like the lady in this picture, she's very happy and smiling because manufacturers have realized that now there's a new era wherein they could reach out to the consumers directly, which would bring in more profits, more revenues. So let's look at that a bit more in detail. Over the last few decades, manufacturers were forced to give us good products, and they have done that. Today's hearing aids are fantastic. But then they realized that just having good products was not enough. They felt that the product still had to go through an audiologist, and we were very few globally. So the access was a challenge. So some manufacturers took that challenge on themselves, and they said, let's set up our own retail stores. So that happened in US, Australia, Europe. So there were very popular large retail stores where patients used to walk in and get hearing aids. But then manufacturers realized that running retail stores is not easy. It's very cost heavy. You have to pay for the staff, the consumables, the electricity, rentals, things like that. And then the manufacturers thought, why are we doing this? Because we want more patients. So they thought with the internet, What if I'm able to get the patient online and send it to a clinic so that my sale is still done? So that's how we entered the era of lead generation campaign, and it's been going quite robust even in India for the last 3 or 4 years, wherein a manufacturer makes an advertisement online, and then once the patient hits that ad, they would refer the patient to a clinic, with the catch that manufacturer would then kind of force the clinic to give the same hearing aid, which the manufacturer makes. Even when they did that, the manufacturers noticed that not all audiology clinics were same. So they thought, okay, we need to step in here as well and try to fix the clinics by setting up clinics in conjunction with audiologists so that they look nice. Best example in India are best sound centers, where manufacturers are helping audiologists to set up good quality standard clinics with, again, the whole intention of increasing market share and penetration. I mean, what manufacturers are doing is not wrong. I mean, they are doing beyond what's expected for them to do because they want more people to get hearing aids. So there's no harm in that way. But by doing all these things, they have also come at a tipping point where they're now thinking, what if I don't even rely on an audiologist? What if technology is getting so much better and I as in a manufacturer, has experience in doing marketing online? So what if I'm able to directly send hearing aid to the patient? Because on one side, patient wants that. On the other side, manufacturers are getting that expertise in marketing and developing that product. So it's a bit of a worry for us, isn't it? So that's how an audiologist looks these days. We are worried, and the poll answers said the same thing. Most of you are worried of what's going to happen with direct to consumer hearing aids, right? Let's look at our dilemma. When our profession began, we followed a medical model, right? We said we are like doctors, so let's copy doctors. We will give recommendations on what hearing aids to take. But then we realized that patients did not like that, right? There were a lot of surveys that being done. They felt even though I followed the recommendation, the device that I got was not good. I'm not happy. At that point of time, audiologists also blamed it on the device and manufacturers saying, oh, they're not great. Then all of a sudden, devices got better. We got excited. We knowingly or unknowingly became device centric. We started talking about number of channels and directional microphones and noise reductions, trying to impress the patient that we are giving them a beautiful product. But then thankfully, institutes like IDA Institute came up, and then they made us realize that it's not about our opinion, our interest. It's not about the audiogram. It's not about the pathology. It's actually about what the patient wants. So then most of us started following patient-centered care, wherein we looked at their emotions, their willingness to get a device, and we said, if you don't want a device, there's still other options. And then the whole importance on rehab and communication tactics came in, right? So on one side, we wanted to be patient friendly, and we wanted to follow what the patient wants to give him. So once we said yes, now the patient suddenly wants hearing aids directly being sent to them. So that's our dilemma. So where do we fit in? Suddenly the patient has become a consumer and hearing aid has become like a health device. Like these days, how everyone wears smart watches, something in their ears, hearing aids are moving on that side. So where do we all fit in? I think out of all these changes, I think audiologists are the ones who's going to get hit really hard, isn't it? So that covered the first agenda, which ends on a bit of not climax, but a bit of a suspense. Where do we fit in, right? So let's talk about disruption. So I'm going to scare you even. Yes.
Can I just interrupt? I just
Yes,
want to remind the audience, if they have any questions, let them post in the questions one. We will take them up at the end. Okay, as and when they have any questions, they can post them and we will take them at the end. Thank you. Continue.
Right. Thank you. So we ended the first agenda on a bit of a suspense, what happens to us as an audiologist. So I'm going to scare you even further, talking about what kind of disruptions are around the corner. And then hopefully I'll be able to guide you out of this dilemma. So it all started with this particular brand, right? Bose, most of you would be aware of this brand as the ones that make high quality headphones, noise cancellation and things like that. So these are like an aspirational brand, right? So if you want a good headphones or a good speaker, we used to say get Bose. Expensive but high quality. So there's definitely association of high sound quality with Bose, and these are the guys who created disruption for our field. So let's look into that a bit. So let's look at timeline. Now, this happened all in United States, and whatever happens in US, eventually the world kind of emulates that, whether it's good or bad, right? So earlier to 2017, FDA said that there are only two categories of products when it comes to hearing. One is hearing aid, and then the other ones were PSA, or personal sound amplifiers. So FDA said personal sound amplifiers are for normal hearing people, and hearing aids are for hearing impaired individuals. To get personal sound amplifiers, it's for normal hearing, so customers can just go and buy it. But for hearing aid, they had to see an audiologist, get an assessment and all that. Now in 2017, Bose files an application to FDA. It says that we have a device which is like a hearing aid, but doesn't require an audiologist. But we cannot sell it as a personal sound amplifier because it's for a hearing loss patient. So FDA was like, this is new. We don't have a category like this. So Bose said, we would like to apply for a OTC hearing aid category. OTC meaning over-the-counter hearing aid. FDA first hesitated, but then the Bose and the other people involved kind of justified, saying hearing aids are expensive. And only in 1 in 5 American who has a hearing loss have hearing aids, and they successfully convinced FDA, saying that cost was an inhibiting factor. So FDA finally agreed, saying, okay, if Bose can give a hearing aid which is at a cheaper cost and more Americans can buy it, we can approve it. So they got the approval, and now 2021, Bose finally launched those products called sound control hearing aids, which are over-the-counter, direct-to-consumer hearing aids, so no audiologist required, right? So let's look at this further. Now, once Bose started to do this, Bose was not the only one. Even the mainstream hearing aid manufacturers were also doing this. GN, which makes GN Resound hearing aids, bought Jabra. Jabra is also a headphone manufacturer way back in 2000. Why would a hearing aid company buy a headphone brand? Similarly, this year, Sonova, which gives us Unitron and Phonak hearing aids, went ahead and bought Sennheiser headphone, Sennheiser company, which makes headphones. We use them with our audiometers as well. So again, why would a hearing aid company buy a headphone brand? And on the other side, we have Apple and Samsung applying for hearing aid patents. So we as audiologists, we need to just step back and connect the dots. Right? On one side, headphone brands are entering into hearing aids, and now hearing aid companies are buying headphone brands. So it's all going to get mixed, right? So again, the question is, where do we stand? Right? So let's look at some terminologies, and then we'll start to answer questions. Right now, the hearing aids that we give as audiologists, as clinicians, are prescriptive hearing aids, right? So this is where we are comfortable. Patient comes to us, says, I have a hearing loss. We do all our tests and then recommend a device, right? So we're comfortable doing this. We want this to remain. On the other hand, we discussed personal sound amplifiers. We have nothing to do with them. That's meant for normal hearing people, wherein they could go online and purchase. Now, our problem is OTC hearing aid has come in, and these hearing aids are for individuals with perceived mild to moderate hearing loss. Now, that's the key word. It's called perceived. So that means if a patient feels, I have a mild loss or a moderate loss, he need not go to an audiologist. He can, just because he's feeling that he has a hearing loss, he could go buy a product like Bose, which is direct to consumer. He could self-fit them, do a simple test on his phone and fit the device. Now, once Bose starts to do this, other companies will come in. Hearing aid companies will not stay back in this competition. They will think of a route wherein prescriptive hearing aids, that is the hearing aids that I and you give out in the clinic, they would think of a route of how do I push this via a DTC route. So Do we have a future in that kind of a path, right? So let me repeat that. Prescriptive hearing aids, the hearing aids that we give in the clinic, what if we were able to give that out like what Bose is doing right now? So let's look at that in the next slides. So how do we embrace this change that's happening? First thing is, we need to understand that we as audiologists are not trained only to give hearing aids. Now, the poll said that adult audiology, 91% of you said that it involved only hearing aid dispensing, 91%. So we need to step back. We need to go back to our studies, what we did in college. We never studied only hearing aids. We learned so much more. So we need to increase our service bandwidth, right? So if you're only dependent on hearing aids, then we will be in trouble. So when I say increase service bandwidth, what all can be done? So I will list 4 of these things, but there could be many more, right? So first thing is pediatric audiology. Second thing is unbundled service. Third thing is improving our knowledge, service, and expertise. And finally, we can still do direct to consumer hearing aid dispensing. So we would spend some time on these 4 aspects. And there are many more. There is vestibular and electrophysiology. There's so much more to be done in our field. And I think this is a good time for us to realize that audiologists are more than a person who just sells or fits hearing aids. Right. So let's look at pediatric audiology in brief. From an Indian context, there is a huge need, right? So there's innumerable stories and cases that are here where there's always been late identification because there was no expert around, right? So if you can focus on this, it's good for our country, it's good for our kids, it's good for our profession. By being a pediatric audiologist, on the attendee list, if there are pediatric audiologists, they will agree with this statement. It makes you a better professional at adult hearing aid dispensing as well, because you realize the importance of rehab and continued care, because your thought process would not be just around the device, you think more holistically. So if audiologists are not into pediatric audiology and you're getting worried with what Bose is doing, it's time that you start thinking pediatric audiology. Next, let's talk about unbundled service, right? Hearing aids are not ice creams, right? Buying an ice cream is easy. You go there, you pay your money, get an ice cream, you're happy. With hearing aids, it's not like that. So let's say, for example, Bose, there's no guarantee that the patient goes online, pays the money, gets the Bose, and he's happy. So we as professionals need to hammer this home. We need to market this more often. What is Bose marketing? Bose is marketing that, or Bose or any company, you can Google now, there's Olive Pro, which is going to come out, which is again like AirPods and do the same thing what the Bose do. What do they market? They say, we will send you a device at the convenience of your home. They're cheaper. That's it. They don't talk about what will happen if things don't go as per plan. Only thing they will say is, we give you a 100-day return period. So if you're not happy, you can send it back. So that's where we come in. For patients who are not satisfied with these kind of products, we need to offer our unbundled service. So let's look at an example of an unbundled service model, right? So this chart came out in 2019 based on what was happening with FDA, right? So you could now have 3 categories of patient. First category is called a precept, wherein he just goes, buys something online, and you can still call him saying, you have a Bose hearing aid, you're not happy, come to my clinic. And then we could start charging separately for our services. Now we should just not restrict ourselves for audiogram, because all your self-testing is doing only that. We should now start doing cognitive screening, speech and noise testing, acceptable noise tests. And then we should go a step further and start testing the device. Okay, you have Bose, you have this, you have Apple, whatever it is, give me the device, let me test them out, make sure that they're working. So electroacoustic measures, we have been trained in our college days, but we rarely use them in our practical day-to-day environment because there was no need. But now the need is slowly being is coming in, right? So real ear measurements as well. So let me put the Bose in your ear and see what it is doing. Maybe you can help them customize it by giving ear impressions. What about counseling and communication strategies to the family members? right? So all these things can still be done for a person who buys, say, something like a Bose headset. And then you can charge them. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you can have an hourly rate. I'm hopeful that once this becomes like a mainstream, ISHA and RCI can all get together and decide on an hourly professional rate, which we could charge. And then we could charge what's called as a complexity fee, right? Wherein if it's Bose where patient makes most adjustments, I will charge very little. But what if you had category 2, wherein the patient had a hearing aid itself, which you and I dispense? Maybe he bought it online or from some other clinic. You could offer the same kind of services. Your professional fees could be slightly higher because you have much more to do in these hearing aids. You can program them, whereas Bose, the patient has to program. And then the third category comes in, is called expert interface, wherein you tell the patient that if you want expert advice, expert opinion, expert guidance, then you leave everything to me. Of course, it's going to cost you a bit more, but you don't have to worry about it. So I strongly believe this will all go a full circle. Patients will get excited. They will think that, oh, I can buy my own hearing aids, and then they will realize the shortfalls, and then they will still come back looking for a good audiologist. But a good audiologist would not be just doing PTA and fitting hearing aids. A good audiologist would be doing speech and noise testing, electroacoustic measures, real ear measurements, ear impressions, ear molds, and rehab, and so much more. So we need to unbundle service, increase our bandwidth. Don't just focus on the product, right? Now let's talk about knowledge, service, and expertise that goes hand in hand with this thought process. We as audiologists need to inform patients that once they look up online, all they get is information. But we as audiologists have knowledge and expertise. So we need to drive this message home, right? You have information, I have knowledge and expertise. Don't confuse information to expertise. If someone says online that Bose does this and it's better, that's just information. Whether it does that, whether it does it in your ear for your hearing loss, you need my knowledge and you need my expertise. So at times like these, you need to again educate patients saying pure tone testing is not enough at times. At times, just one product is not enough. So your clinic should have now multi-brand device advantage, wherein you can say, when you go online, you're just getting one manufacturer, one thing. But in my clinic, you can get everything and I will tell you what's best for you. Real ear measurements, I keep repeating this at so many platforms, are crucial because that really differentiates a good audiologist from a fitter. You'll understand what the hearing devices are doing. If you start doing real ear measurements, you'll also realize very quickly that hearing devices are not just plug and play. They will not fix all the problems, no matter how expensive or how great tech they have in them. Interesting point is, all these headphone guys are making hearing aids, but headphones you use for maybe 2 hours or 3 hours a day, whereas hearing aids run for 8 to 10 hours a day. So what about repairs and ongoing support? Right? There are no Bose stores in every city, in every area, right? But there are audiology clinics. So that's our advantage. If we focus on ongoing support and help the patients out, even for patients who have other over-the-counter products, they will realize that it's just not the product, that service is important because these devices will break down. And at the end, if you do all these things well, patients will realize that you are an expert and that is more important than the device that they're getting. Okay, so but for that to do that, we will also have to up our game. We need to get better. Even if we all do that, I would still advise that we should still cater to DTC market. When I say DTC, it's direct to consumer. I'm not saying you give out Bose, but I'm saying start thinking of how can you give the same hearing aids that you give in the clinic to the patient directly at their home, right? Because that's will be there. That's the mainstay. So let's look at that. Now, DTC is a choice we are forced to embrace. Now, to do that, you will have to offer online hearing test on your website. Signia has done something nice. They've taken Shoebox Audiometry. So that's a company which does online tests. So they help you out with your own patients to do online tests. Same way Sonova has come up with a patch which you can embed on your website and patients can go do their own online test. So if someone says that, look, I have seen a Bose ad, I'm thinking to get that, what should I do? You can tell them, you could do the same thing in our clinic, not just Bose, I can give you so many other brands. And you could do the same test sitting at your home. But you should educate the patient the differences, right? When you go online and self-test, the accuracy could be lower. So, but let the patient decide. So you should be an audiologist who would say, I have both, you can come to me, or we can do DTC. When you choose to do DTC, make sure the cost of ownership via DTC should be cheaper, because patient is doing most of the work, your time is saved. So you need to think of automating DTC process to safeguard your time. So when patient says, I'm going to test my own hearing, have a pre-recorded video of instructions. So you don't see those kind of patients. You see patients who visit your clinic, and let the system handle such kind of patients. But still do it. The reason being, they will be there. So there is a market potential there, and you can reach out to these patients. And once he is a DTC, there's a very high likelihood that he would also be coming into your clinic as well, right? So is this really possible, audiologist and DTC? Because I'm just saying these things. We have not embraced this fully in our clinic, but we are getting there. We have tried and tested these online testing stuff. We constantly do remote fine tuning. We have also tried a couple of times of sending out hearing aids through this DTC path. We're still learning, but let's look at an example which is successful. Now, do you remember these faces and names? Harvey Abrams, right? When I was doing AUD, this gentleman taught me hearing aids at University of Florida. James Hall, we all have his textbooks for electrophysiology. He was there too at University of Florida. And then Bopana, again, very common name in audiology community. Now look what these guys have done. They've all gotten together, right? Traditional audiologists like you and me, who are working in universities teaching students, and they have come up with a company called Lively. So what does Lively do? It sends hearing aids direct to the patient's home. Now, those of you who are into hearing aids, if you look at this, this is nothing but a ReSound Quattro hearing aid, but branded as Lively. So how the process works is the patient goes on their website, puts in their own headphones, through their laptop, they do a test. It's a simple pure tone test. The devices get programmed. Now, don't you think an audiologist with so much of experience would be able to program it better than, say, someone who is sending out device from Bose or somewhere else? So that's where we should back ourselves up. So these guys program the device, send it to the patient's home, and then the live support begins. So there's remote fine tuning and things like that. Right now, imagine if your clinic could do the same thing. It's being done. It's not rocket science, but with an added advantage, saying the patient is free to walk in if he wants to. Right. So that's how we as audiologists start to think of DTC route. Right. So in summary, right. So let's look at what all we have discussed. Whether you like it or not, DTCs, that is direct to consumer hearing aids, are here to stay, right? And you can see it in the designs of the hearing aids that are going to come out, right? So like, for example, Signia launched Styleto hearing aids, which look very fancy RIE traditional hearing aids, but they made it more stylish so that we as audiologists can also compete, right, in these kind of markets. Right, then very shortly they'll come out with something called as Signia Active, which looks like hearables, which looks like your traditional Bluetooth headphones, but they're still a hearing aid. So again, hearing aids will soon become hearables. So there will be very subtle difference between what is a headphone and what is a hearing aid. So once this happens, expect to lose 20% of your existing market share. So if you had 100 patients buying hearing aids from you, 80 would buy and 20 would go out and buy these hearables. But at the same time, market size will increase because your 20 went out. But then people who have not gone to an audiologist will start to buy hearables. So at least they'll start thinking about the hearing loss, whether they're satisfied or not is secondary. But the process of more people having something in the ear becomes common. Finally, we will reach a age and stage wherein how spectacles have become fashion, I think hearing aids will now start to become fashion accessories. But with that, be prepared that first-time buyers may not come see an audiologist. They would do it online, and once they're not happy, they would be there for you. So you should be prepared to handle more severe type of hearing losses. And again, don't just depend on hearing aids. Do much more. Unbundle your services. Look at pediatric audiology. Look at electroacoustic measures, relay measures, right? And then don't just get identified with the device. So if you do that, we would definitely have a lot more to do in the field of audiology, and then me and you, all of us, can thrive. I would like to end my presentation with this quote. It's from Wayne Gretzky. He was an ice hockey player. He said, very popular quote, he says, "I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been." So the same thing applies to our field today. DTC hearing aids are around the corner. We cannot be just waiting and watching. We need to prepare and be ready when that becomes a mainstream. At that point, we cannot do trial and error because the other companies will overtake us. So start doing your own little trials within your own clinics. Even if it's just 1 or 2 patients a month, try and see how does DTC work. And then you will gain expertise on that. With that, I would like to once again thank ISHA for giving me this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Vikrant, for that excellent lecture. Some of the key terms, which I think I felt like emphasizing them from your presentation are unbundled. Okay, that is something which all the participants should think about it. In whatever setup you are, I don't say not just the clinician working in a private practice. I think this should be applicable even the institution-based practices also. Unbundled. Second thing is information. With the outburst of or with the tsunami of technology, information access now is in the fingertips. Okay, with the smartphones, with the network, 4G connections, now 5G and all coming up. Anyone has access to the information, not just in English, in the regional languages. With the translators and all, they're able to get the information in their own languages. Knowledge is another term which I would like to emphasize. You highlighted on the difference between the information and knowledge. I think that's what we have to catch up on. Okay, you get a lot of information, but that information, is it an appropriate, tested, scientifically evaluated information or not? The once it is there, that becomes a knowledge. Okay, where you have added advantages of supporting the documents for that. Okay. Then your expertise. That's the final word which I would like to summarize. One is, you as a trained professionals, having graduated for 4 years and doing a post graduation for 2 years and then go for a higher education or expertise, we should make a difference from those of others. Definitely we are living in a democratic country. We cannot stop anybody doing anything, but the moment you start realizing and make the difference of ourselves, people will identify. It may be as simple as our own consumer products. Sometimes who is an expert and who is a flyby kind of a technician. So you always prefer spending more money for a authorized dealer and authorized service persons rather than. I don't want to equate that and create a confusion. It's not. It's a completely different, but it's just a kind of anecdotal kind of a thing which I'm trying to give you. We have to preserve our expertise by what all you said, like adding on your services, adding value to your services by your earlier measurements, electroacoustic measures. Yes, it takes a lot of time, definitely, but that's where the patient will have to pay for the expertise you're going to give it to them. And that's something, as you rightly said, we have to start thinking differently. Before somebody comes and takes up the market, let's be ready for it. Let's gear up for the situation and ensure that we maintain our professionalism in the thing. There are some questions which I would like to pose for you.
Yes, sir.
Is something which has been there always, online evaluations versus on-site evaluation. Now, when you start encouraging the online evaluation, hearing evaluation, does it decrease the scope? I think you did explain that, but I think it's maybe good to re-emphasize on that. Online hearing
Yes.
evaluation versus on-site.
Right, sir. So on all your online hearing evaluation, I feel should come with a disclaimer saying it's not a diagnostic test. It's only given because you as a patient preferred convenience over expertise. So we feel that if your online tests are not giving you the results, we can still step in and ask you to come to the clinic. So that way, we give you a safety net, which an only online provider may not give you. Now, let's say if a patient goes and buys Lively product from US, now Lively, they don't have clinics, so they cannot go to an on-site clinic. So we have to bring in that channel and tell the patient online is available, less sensitive, may not be diagnostic enough, but you chose convenience. If you don't want that, I'm still here, come to me. So that's the message we have to give.
Yeah. So let's not worry. That's as a disclaimer. That's very important. You know the limitations. I think the patient, if it is as he rightly said, the patient education is important on the advantages and disadvantages of your online hearing, and that we as an expert, we have an authority to say that definitely. Okay. So, and we can show them also the difference, when they have an on-site evaluation, and if there is the differences, you can show them, says this is your online evaluation and this is your on-site with a controlled room, how the differences are there. Okay, moving on, I think this is something which you would also, will be interested to answer. Is it good to boycott those companies? That's what I think was your right. Those who are supporting online sales or online DTC, all that.
Right. See, there's no straightforward answer. But good thing, I'll tell you what's happened in India, right? Because we at our clinic, we deal with so many manufacturers. Finally, all the manufacturers have stepped up their game and they've stopped online sales of hearing aids, right? So it's a long story. They have done this because maybe even manufacturers are sensing that there is a direct to consumer market going to come in, right? So they have stopped all these quacks from selling hearing aids online. But then we cannot boycott these manufacturers because these manufacturers will still give us products which can compete with D2C, O2C products, right? If there's something, let's take Bose, for example. They're going to give you a hearing aid which is going to cost you 62,000 rupees for a pair in India, right? And at 62,000, you can have a basic set of hearing aids from other companies as well. Now, let's say, for example, Resound. Now they have given it to Lively, so you feel that, oh, they have given it to Lively, so I'm not going to deal with them, boycott. But at that 62,000 price point, Resound would still give you a better product than Bose, right? Which can give you more options to, match or talk to the patient. So boycotting, I think, would be a knee-jerk reaction. We should not do that. I think manufacturers are here to increase the market share, not cannibalize what they have. So they're not going to steal all of your patients through DTC. Yes, some will go, but some will come in too, provided you've changed your practice as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very diplomatic answer, I know, but then there's no easy answer.
I think that's the way it needs to be put in also. It's up to the choice of the professional, how you do it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you start boycotting, but there's somebody else also to pick it up. So that's a controversial always. It's good to keep it diplomatic. Now, as with your experience, you've been practicing real ear measurements and doing all electroacoustic and trying to be very transparent in those hearing aid fittings. Can you guide some of these young professionals who are coming up in terms of the cost involved? Is it really expensive to do it, to have really measurements in the clinical practice, especially the private practice, and how much charges, be it, or the long-term benefits in that?
Yes, good practical question, sir. Compared to an audiometer, if you had to buy a really measurement unit as well, it's definitely expensive. But having said that, it pays you 10 times more in the long run. The reason being, really a measurement is a tool for you to fit your hearing aids better. So that means you'd have more satisfied patients with hearing aids that will give in more referrals, more patients will come and buy hearing aids from you, right? So that's one way of looking at it from a monetary aspect. Second thing is, in terms of charges, of course, we do charge a nominal fee in our clinic of 400 rupees for just doing relay measurement. That 400 rupees would never cover the cost of the equipment. But why we do this is to just have face value. But what helps us is, apart from patients being satisfied and buying hearing aids and referring more, what helps us as audiologists is it gives you a confidence that you don't just rely on manufacturer software. When manufacturer software says it's doing feedback suppression, how do you know it is doing feedback suppression? Would you just believe what the software says? When manufacturer says that, okay, feedback suppression is on, you have 10 dB extra gain, and you click on the software and it shows the volume has gone from say 60 to 70, but how do you know it's actually happening in the patient's ear? So only way of doing that is relay measurements. So apart from money, it gives you a whole lot of confidence in tackling any device from any manufacturer, and you become an authority. That's where we are heading towards, right? So we don't want to be just dispensers. We want to be an expert in the devices. So relay measurements have to be made mandatory. I think we have to do this drive from ISHA and RCI saying without relay measurements, no devices should get fitted. So that way we can then stand apart from these online and D2Cs and things like that. The reason all these came in because we actually were doing substandard fittings. Why did online hearing aids come in? Because we didn't do what was supposed to be done. So relay measurements is absolute must in my opinion.
Thank you, Vikrant. There are a few comments in terms of saying like adaptability, that the need for us to adapt, the need for us to respect the company's policies which are coming up, the need for us to respect the approval authorities like FDA when they have approved certain products. I think there is a need for us to respect that. Whatever be the reason, whether it may be good or bad, but there should have, when such a recognized body approves something, a lot of research, a lot of points should have been considered. So there were comments related to that. There was one
Can I just add? I'll just add. This is a very nice point. So it's not about what me or you want. It's finally what the consumer wants, what the patient wants. So it's becoming clear that patient wants something like a DTC. So that's why we have to respect and we have to adapt. We cannot stop innovation.
Yeah. There was one question on, this is something, what is that? There was a question related to recreational hearing protection devices.
Yeah.
What is the future of recreational hearing protection devices? I think it's basically EPDs.
Yes, EPDs, and even, for example, the earphones that I'm wearing right now, these have noise cancelling in them and they have mics. So what the headphones will also take up a role would be as noise cancellers. So if they detect that environmental noise is beyond a certain level, they would give you warnings, or the noise reduction would kick on and then they would drop it. So that's coming as well.
Yeah. Just on that point, when you said unbundle, you listed few of the things. I think this is something which where we have a role. Occupational hearing loss is something which many of the audiologists across the India have not really tapped. There are few have really tapped, trying up with the companies, and there are some industrial audiologists who are working. But still, I think we have not tapped those things, especially with these recreational devices, which is increasing in now. there's a lot that we can do. There are some studies at dissertation level being done, and that recreational music, how it can cause damage to the hearing. There are proven scientific evidences in India too. That's true. Okay. Now there's, I think we should be coming to an end of our session. We have about 4 minutes. Now let me just scan through some of the questions that can need your attention. And how about DTC and the level of patient satisfaction? The DTC and the patient satisfaction. Can you touch upon, highlight upon that again?
Yes. So the evidence right now is scanty because it's new days for us. But whatever I've read based on even Bose, what they did a pilot project in one of the universities in US. They say for mild to moderate loss, if they go in for an occluded fitting, the satisfaction rates are comparable to hearing aids fitted from an audiologist, right? So there's a lot of conditions. So the condition number one was mild to moderate, occluded fitting, and then they're satisfied. Now we'll have to see for greater losses, I think the disparity would be more, and then the satisfaction levels might be less. Having said that, now see, this is how things are changing. FDA approved only for mild to moderate, but now we have a product coming in called Olive Pro, which has capability to go till severe, right? So if the patient is still free to buy that device, so we'll have to see. But as an audiologist, I would feel greater the loss, the satisfaction will come down because there's so much more going on in terms of sound processing, which it would not be so easy to just increase the volume from an app and do that.
Thank you. I think as we come to the end, there are a few more questions that we will share with you for them to be answered.
Right, sir.
Srividya, you want to have anything to conclude before?
Nothing, sir. You have taken the questions anyway, so there's nothing else.
Right. So once again, thank you, Dr. Vikrant, for enlightening our audience today on not keeping ourselves in a locked room ourselves, but try to open up ourselves, meet the current demands and the changes that are happening all over the world, not just in India, but all over the world. Embrace the changes, not fight against the changes. Go along with the wind. One key thing that I think always, as you rightly mentioned, maintain your professionality and expertise to make the difference. To make the difference where people will ultimately will say, I don't want to buy a hearing aid on online. Let me go to the audiologist. I can get a better service. So if you want to give any concluding remarks, we can, Vikrant, and then we can close the session. Okay, so thank you one and all for participating and interacting for your questions. See you again in our next series of webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.